Hey everyone, this is Mark Ryan coming at you with another video, and today we're talking about the post-millennial view versus the pre-millennial view. And when I look at it, I see just two radically different views. We're going to talk about like this thumbnail here, but I've got to set things up first. We're going to talk how like post-mill, it's the brightest days ever under that view. Unprecedented prosperity and flourishing like the world has never known under that view. Whereas pre-mill, like it's the darkest days ever. Things have never been so in so much chaos and turmoil under that view. Post-mill view, billions born again as a revival just sweeps the earth, and Christianity puts everything under its footstool. Pre-mill, hey, you know, like billions dead actually, and there's a revival going on too, but billions dead, and so you're like crying out for Christ to return, like under the pre-mill view. Post-mill view, Satan is loosed in everything, and you know he tempts the world again, and there is some turmoil going on, and yet there's still widespread faithfulness on the earth. Pre-mill view, no, it's like the apostasy going on. We're going to talk about those things, but first I got to set things up, so stay with me. Now, to get started, we kind of have to talk about famous post-millennial guys. Jonathan Edwards is probably your most famous post-millennialist, and this was the dominant view in America in like the 1700s, 1800s. It's the dominant view. Today, it's pre-millennial by far. Mainstream evangelicalism, like pre-millennial view, that's the dominant one. Is that good? Is that bad? Hey, I don't know, but that's what most evangelicals believe today. And so post-millennial view, that it kind of died out. It kind of went extinct or endangered. There are very few, really like the last 100 years. Doug Wilson kind of single-handedly brought it back with a few others in America, with like Gary DeMar and everything. And then Jeff Durbin has made it even more popular, even more mainstream. And so post-millennialism, like it's gaining popularity today. I see gaining popularity with like the abolitionist movement, which I think is just a phenomenal movement right now. Then James White came out as a post-millennial guy just not too long ago. And so it's gaining traction today. 50 years ago, it had just about zero traction. Now, there's a lot more well-known guys who are pre-millennial, like Charles Spurgeon definitely was. Sometimes you'll have post-millennials try to claim Spurgeon as one of them. He's simply not. That can be refuted very easily. I could read quotes from Spurgeon saying, hey, like he was convinced that Jesus Christ would have to return in order to usher in the millennium. It would have to be the physical return of Jesus Christ before the millennium happened. So he would be pre-millennial. Steve Lawson, he is pre-millennial. John MacArthur, John Piper, Ray Comfort, Al Mohler, they're all pre-millennial guys, very well known. And again, it's mainstream. Now, if you're like me, you've been in the church long enough that you've met a lot of people who have had a fascination towards end times stuff. And for me, like that's turned me away from really studying it, to be honest. You've got ministries out there that, hey, there's only one book in the Bible and it's Revelation, and that's what they focus on. And if they go to a different book, it's like the book of Daniel. It's another prophetic book, so that they can talk about end time stuff even more. And like they're imbalanced and everything. I think of Hal Lindsey, who he'd have his Bible in one hand and like the newspaper in the other hand, and you would watch the Hal Lindsey report. And a lot of Christians got kind of turned off by that, kind of the conspiracy theorist view, if you want to call it that, you know, where hey, the newspaper it's happening right now in Revelation. And they'll point to the verse and everything. A lot of people got turned off by that, and I feel like that's caused people to go more post-millennial. Now, in the comments below, tell me, are you post-mill, ah-mill, or pre-mill? Because, like, I'm curious, I'm nosy, I want to know, and then just tell me why, because I'm curious, I want to know what this channel's, like, audience, like, holds to. If I had to guess, it would be a mix of everything, actually, with no clear winner. Maybe probably more pre-mill than anyone else, just because that's more mainstream. But I want to talk a little bit about this picture and kind of explain it. The post-mill view has the reputation for being the optimistic view. And so in the 1700s and 1800s, it was the dominant view. It kind of started dying towards the end of the 1800s. But there was just this optimistic view with the missions movement, and you saw the gospel just going all around the world. And hey, now it's saturating North America and getting into South America. And you could see just the gospel. It kind of made sense on a tangible level. Like the gospel is going to go everywhere and just transform society like it's doing, like we're seeing it happen before our very eyes. And so it was the dominant view. And then, hey, the world wars happened, World War I, World War II, and there became more of a pessimistic view, and premillennialism started kind of taking hold, which does make sense. And one of the guys that I really admire who talks about these different views would be Martyn Lloyd Jones, and he's amill, actually, if I understand him right. He calls it the spiritual view. Anyways, if you find end times fascinating and hey, it interests you, you want to learn more about it, I would highly recommend David Martyn Lloyd Jones. John MacArthur modeled a lot of his preaching ministry after David Martyn Lloyd Jones. David Martyn Lloyd Jones is kind of like the Spurgeon after Spurgeon. This is what he looks like, but he talks about the post-mill view. And hey, there's a lot of optimism. The missions movement, it's thriving. The gospel's going forward. But he argues that if you could tell the post-mill people, like, hey, there's a time where Europe, you could be thrown in prison for preaching the gospel in Europe, they wouldn't have believed you. They would have been like, shut up. No way. If you would tell them, hey, in Canada, if you just have church in Canada now, you could be thrown in jail. They would be like, no, we don't believe you. Honestly, we could say the same thing here in America. There's a time in America where if you open your church, you could be thrown in jail. If you preach the gospel and if you preach biblical morality, biblical sexual morality, you could be thrown in prison. You could lose your business. Post-millennials, David Martyn Lloyd Jones argues, hey, like they wouldn't have believed this stuff. And he kind of gives it as a reason to kind of reject it, or to say that, hey, they were prisoners of the moment, and that they saw the gospel. They had this optimistic view on everything. Doug Wilson, though, I think he gives a good response to that, in that he says, hey, with Christianity, historically, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And so he would respond to Lloyd Jones and say, hey, Christianity right now, like if you have your eyes open, you see Christianity kind of taking a step back as far as just exerting its authority on continents, even in Europe and in North America and everything. Like culture of Christianity's losing its influence for sure. There's no questioning that. And yet at the same time, Doug Wilson would say, yep, we're just taking 1 step back. Give it some time, and it'll be 2 steps forward, and you'll see Europe again be Christianized, in North America, everything like that. And so that's a response. Hey, is that a compelling response? Like, let me know. To me, yes and no. I mean, it is a good response, but you could just always say that. You could say that forever. You could say it during the tribulation or whatever. If the pre-millennial view is true, you could say it during that, when everything's falling apart, and you could just always say that, Now, Jeff Durbin is probably your most influential post-mill guy. He has a lot of influence. His YouTube channel reaches a lot of people, and he's kind of started the abolition movement. You kind of have to mention Jeff because, like, he is passionately post-mill. I think of Spurgeon, like, he wouldn't be passionately pre-mill. That wasn't front and center. It was kind of in the background when you look at it. But Jeff Durbin is like passionately post-mill. He'll be confrontational towards the pre-mill, especially dispensational position. You guys are a bunch of escapists. He says that like all the time. I want to talk about this thumbnail because it gets to the two radically different views. Under the post-mill view, it's the brightest days of the world, like the brightest days ever. Things have never been brighter. Things have never been better. Christianity covers the earth and exerts its dominance. It places all the enemies of Jesus Christ are made to be its footstool. And so I get the sense there's two different kinds of post-mill. One is where it's like spiritual, and so it doesn't exert its force on in like governance and maybe like education and all these different institutions, media, whatever, not Seven Mountains theology, but you could say all those different things are Christianized. The second view would be no, like Christianity does gain dominion over the government, over just society, education, like everything kind of becomes Christianized and under Christ's foot, pretty much. And so it's the brightest days. There is this special time of blessing that's been unmatched ever. Prosperity is just covering the earth because people are living by God's word, and the gospel is changing lives, changing hearts. And where the gospel changes lives and hearts, people are living according to God's word. Like there's going to be prosperity there. And because this is just covering the entire world, like mankind has never known this kind of bright days, this kind of prosperity, this kind of peace. There is just this time of just amazing peace. That's why I have the everyone holding hands around the world, right? Because there is just this unmatched, unprecedented kind of peace that's going on right now too. Butterflies, hey, things are rainbows, sunshine, butterflies, unicorns in that, hey, nothing like this has ever happened before to have this kind of peace on earth. And ice cream, hey, it's the best of times under the post-mill view. I don't think that I'm misrepresenting the post-mill view. If you're post-mill and you think I am, then like in the comments below, tell me like, Mark, you're misrepresenting me. And here's why. Like, I want to know, like, I really want to know, because again, eschatology, it's not my thing. It's kind of like when I'm talking about other stuff, like soteriology, like I'm on my home field, like we're in Montana. But when I talk end time stuff, it's like you're visiting another country or another planet. That's kind of how I feel right now, because there's a lot more people who are a lot more qualified to talk about these things than me. That's for sure. Now, if I understand this view correctly, they would say, hey, there's this period of unmatched prosperity. Things have never been brighter. Things have never been better. And then Satan is loosed before the return of Jesus Christ. And so, hey, when Christ returns, there is calamity. There's trial and turmoil going on as Satan is tempting and doing his thing on earth. David Martyn Lloyd Jones, he's a great exegete, great pastor, theologian. He knows his Bible. He rejects that view based on one verse in Scripture, and I thought we'd go over that. It is Luke 18, verse 8, and it says, it's Jesus Christ speaking. He says, I tell you, he will give justice to them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth? And so David Martyn Lloyd Jones argues that, hey, that's a rhetorical question. And the obvious answer is when the Son of Man comes, when Jesus Christ comes, when he returns to earth, like he's not going to find faithfulness on earth, like widespread faithfulness on earth. Now, if I understand post-mill guys correctly, they would say, well, hey, that verse is talking about 70 AD. I don't find that compelling. I think there's Bible scholars that can punch holes through that. But when Jesus Christ returns, post-mill guys would have to say, well, yes, there'll be widespread faithfulness on the earth. Practically everyone will be serving Jesus Christ. If not everyone, that's hyperbole on my part, right? Faithfulness will be widespread upon the earth because, again, Christianity covers the earth and exerts its influence upon all the earth. That's their view. Well, the words of Jesus Christ seem to say, hey, when the Son of Man returns, will he find faithfulness on the earth? No. The obvious answer is no, and yet post-millennials, they answer it the opposite way. They would say, yep, pretty much everyone, or lots of people. And so David Martyn Lloyd Jones, he dismisses the whole post-millennial view based off that one verse in Scripture. And that, for me, hey, that's a good argument. If you're interpreting that section correctly, that's a good argument. Let's look at the pre-mill view now. Hey, like, it's a radically different view. Not the brightest days ever that Jesus Christ is returning to. It's the darkest days ever. And so I just want to bring out that contrast. Under the pre-mill view, Jesus Christ returns as like a roaring lion. His garments are stained in the blood of his enemies. He's coming back to conquer and damn. And there's not just an apostasy going on, like it's the apostasy. It's a falling away above all other falling aways going on right here. And so Jesus Christ is coming back and he's mad. Like, he's not happy. He's angry. He is full of wrath. And he's coming back to conquer and damn, because there is so much unfaithfulness going on right now. Whereas under the post-mill view, Jesus Christ is returning to just widespread faithfulness. And so it could not be any just polar opposite what's going on right now, if I'm understanding things correctly. And hey, to present the post-mill view again, there's some kind of falling away or something when Satan is loosed onto earth and he's free to tempt and cause turmoil again among the nations, right? Now, on a personal note, I want to say, for me, it's been helpful to study the pre-mill view, not through John MacArthur. John MacArthur has some amazing, phenomenal things. Eschatology, I tend to stay away from John MacArthur. Steve Lawson, though, I think hits it out of the park in just how to understand the pre-mill view. I like how he does it through the Olivet Discourse. That's like his focus there. And really, I want to go through more the lens of Steve Lawson and how he understands it. Steve Lawson points out under the pre-mill view that, hey, the two comings of Christ. The first coming, it's humble. It's to the shepherds, the nobodies. You would think Christ would come to the king or the high priest, the people that mattered, people that were esteemed. No, it was to the shepherds. And hey, Christ came as a lamb, as a sacrificial lamb, laying down his life. He's covered in his own blood. And so that's like the first coming. The second coming under the pre-mill view would be, hey, Christ comes back, and it's not a humble coming. Like, it's in your face. Everyone on planet Earth, like, you can't miss the second coming of Jesus Christ. It's not humble. It's in your face. And Christ isn't coming back as a lamb, a peaceful lamb. Now it's coming as a lion, covered in not his own blood, but the blood of his enemies, coming back to conquer and to damn. Just two radically different comings of Jesus Christ. Now, again, under the post-mill view, you have the brightest days ever, unparalleled prosperity, Christianity covering the earth. Satan's loosed. There's some turmoil there, but Jesus Christ returns after the brightest days ever. Nothing has ever been better. Under the pre-mill view, it's the exact opposite. Like, things have never been more chaotic. It's the darkest days of mankind. There's tons of persecution. Instead of billions being like born again and Christianity exerting its dominance everywhere, no, billions dead. Billions upon billions dead. Stark differences. Couldn't be any more different. Even though pre-mill, hey, if we're going to represent that view accurately, they would say there's a revival going on too. There's many people saved there too. I want to take a look at Mark chapter 13, verses 24 through 26, and just see kind of how the two different views would explain that text. Again, I hope I'm presenting both view accurately. Let me know in the comments if you disagree. Here's what it says. But in those days, after that tribulation, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. And so the post-mill view would say, as I understand it, hey, that happened in 70 AD, and they would explain it with whatever historical thing that happened there. Whereas the pre-mill view would say, hey, like the sun, it won't give its light to the earth. It'll be blotted out. And so, like, generally pre-mill guys would say, hey, like, there's midnight darkness on the earth preceding Christ's return. Like, it's a terrorizing, pitch black darkness upon the earth. And beyond that, it said, the moon will not give its light. Hey, if the sun is blotted out, the same thing with the moon, to a degree. The stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. And so you have this kind of like cosmic shaking of the universe going on under the pre-mill view. You have people being terrorized as they wake up just day after day after day. No sun, no light from the sun. That would be terrifying. That'd be shocking. Like people would be like, hey, what's going on? You can't go to bed and think, hey, like nothing's going on. Things are continuing as they always have. No, something's going on here. And you have God shaking the heavens, the stars. There seems to be falling from the universe. I mean, something radical and shocking is going on. That's radically different than the post-mill view. That's if you get anything out of this, I just want people to see, hey, there's two radically different things happening under these views. Verse 26, let's look at that. And they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and great glory. And Steve Lawson talks about this, and he'd say, hey, like, I believe this is the bright, radiant glory of Jesus Christ. It's brighter than 10,000 suns, which I found shocking, because then you have the earth and there's this pitch black midnight darkness, just day after day, just terrorizing people, like horrifying people. Something's up. And then you have Jesus Christ returning in his bright, radiant glory, brighter than 10,000 suns. Like there's another major contrast going on from pitch black darkness to Jesus Christ returning bright light. That's just another kind of a terrifying scene that's happening for people in unrepentant rebellion against God. Just a stark contrast there too that I find really fascinating too. Now, to be fair, post-mill guys are probably saying, hey, read verse 30. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. And so they would say, hey, well, these things took place in 70 AD. And so these things like really happened that generation. Jesus didn't lie there. Like that's their argument, that all these things, except for the coming of the Son of Man, right? Except for the return of Jesus Christ. That's excluded out of all things, but all these things happened back then. So I think they kind of have to, they have an obstacle too, I think. If I understand it right, maybe I don't, I'm new to this, right? Whereas like your pre-mill guys would say, hey, this generation Jesus was referring to, that actually means a future like generation. One thing I do want to mention too is that Steve Lawson, and there's a lot of guys out there who believe, hey, what happened in 70 AD that the post-mill guys point to, like that's a shadow of things to come, and the ultimate fulfillment, like it's in the future. There's that stance out there. There's like double fulfillment of people that believe that hey, it happened in 70 AD on some level, but in the future is where like the real fulfillment is. There's like two. There's people that believe in multiple, like throughout church history, which is like kind of really getting out there, right? But I find kind of saying, hey, the thing in 70 AD that was the shadows or a double fulfillment, I find that compelling. I think that's a great argument. And Steve Lawson will say, hey, like a lot of times we see prophecies like that where there's like a near fulfillment, but then a far off distant fulfillment that is the actual kind of more complete one. I like that stance. Maybe there's holes in that, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. Now, there's probably some on-mill guys that are upset with me, like, hey, Mark, you ignored us. Like, we exist too. Like, talk about us. But I'm just trying to bring out the two just radically different returns of Christ where, hey, like, there's the brightest days ever again, as opposed to like the darkest days ever. With that, hey, was I wrong on any major things? I mean, write a book in the comments if you want. You can probably tell which view I hold. I tried not to be too biased. I think it bled through though, probably pretty easily. But hey, which view do you think I hold? Which view do you hold? Tell me in the comments below. And with that, I will see you in the next video.